So let's get started with today's webinar. So Ann Sharp is the presenter today. Ann, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ann Sharp. I am the owner of Excellent Admin. We started our business in 2016, designed to help small businesses and nonprofits specifically. I would consider myself a QuickBooks guru, and obviously the training today is going to be focused specifically on nonprofits and how we track things as some of us for nonprofits. And then QuickBooks has actually taken the time to build a nonprofits portal that speaks a little bit more our language, so we're not trying to dissect QuickBooks. This is a newer portal, so if your nonprofit has been established prior to the last 12 months, you might be in an older version of QuickBooks that doesn't necessarily have all the same verbiage, but understand that I'll toggle back and forth so that you know that you're working in the proper areas and things like that. So let's go over what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the payment options for QuickBooks Online. How do we get to them? There's a couple organizations that help nonprofits that you guys buy software through that we'll acknowledge on this call today. That would be something that you would want to use the chat for, people that just intermixing and mingling as other nonprofits in the area or across the country. One of the big organizations that nonprofits use is called TechSoup, and you can buy QuickBooks Online through there. At a severely discounted rate versus just buying it directly from QuickBooks. But you obviously have to have the TechSoup subscription. We're going to talk about your dashboard, what it looks like, what's in there. We're going to work at the budget tool because as nonprofits, we have a budget that we're trying to stay within. We're going to work at reports. Which reports do we need to pull? There's a lot of customization features inside of the reports to pull specific data we might be looking for. We're going to look at the book review, which is an accountant tool. So something that we'll add an accountant for so that we can see that side of the tool. You're going to connect any income software. Donor Perfect is a big one in your guys' industry. We're going to look at random miscellaneous tools, the tax prep process, again, another tool inside of QuickBooks, grant tracking, which is a big one, and then class usage, which some of us might be doing based on projects, fundraising, and those types of things as well. Okay. I will do my best to include every industry under the sun as far as nonprofits goes when using examples. If there is something specific to you, please feel free to reach out in the chat. Obviously, at the end of the session today, I will give you my contact information for you to be able to reach out to me directly for some one-on-one questions if you have them. But I want to start the class before we dive in with all this fun, gushy stuff. Since we have such a small class today, it looks like there's about 40 of you. I want to have a few people put in the chat, what is your nonprofit? What does it do? Because then I can obviously relate back to some of those items. So I would read 5 or 6 of them, but I'm going to give you just a second to put in name of your nonprofit, what maybe your role is, and then what that nonprofit does. And then, you know what, let's add location in there as well. And the reason for that, so we can kind of see where we're looking at for the organizations today. Perfect. So it looks like Sarah posted, and Sarah, if I say this wrong, I apologize. It is Plec Art Council. They give access to art in the rural community. That's awesome. Carmen posted 180 is their nonprofit. They are a residential recovery program. Alex posted that their Bushel Crafts Farm, they have outdoor access and education. They're in northern Indiana. And we have Green Sprout Farm. It's an incubator training for new farmers in Wisconsin. The Chamber of Commerce in Wisconsin. And then Triad Deaf Services. They're in Canton, Ohio. They provide services for deaf community, especially with interpretive services. These are awesome, guys. So as you guys, I read a few of them. You can feel free to post any additional information about your nonprofit in the chat just to share with everybody else in the group. And as you can see, the chat gets filled up pretty quick. That's why when it comes to questions, make sure you put them in the Q&A section. That way I can make sure to answer them for you, okay? So the first thing we're going to look at is the packages options, okay? So these are options that QuickBooks gives you specifically on their website. So if you have your subscription through TechSoup, obviously I don't have a TechSoup subscription myself. I have clients that use TechSoup, so I am familiar with it, but I'm not exactly sure what options inside of TechSoup are given to you. But QuickBooks has built this lovely nonprofit page that we will go through and sign up with to be able to have this option for nonprofits and obviously be able to use it for today's training course. Okay. They're running a Memorial Day sale, so I guess we picked a really good time to do this. You get 90% off for the first 3 months. But if you go down here, it's going to talk about accounting, donation reports. It's going to give you all some of the things we're going to talk about, syncing to your bank, accepting donations, streamlining integration, all this fun stuff. Okay. Then if you get down here, you get to where you have the packages. Okay. These packages have similar names to the ones that are in a normal package. Okay. So simple start, we consider this like the self-employed version, essential, middle of the road, plus version. This is going to have some of the features majority of us need. And then advanced just depends on what you want to spend. Obviously you get 90% off for 3 months. So these numbers don't look scary, but keep in mind that advanced is $235 when you're not in this 90% off. Okay. So that's a lot of money a month. But you can see all the things that happen in the different packages. Now, as far as like budgeting features and reports and stuff, the Simple Start is not going to have some of that. So you definitely can't really do the Simple Start as far as a nonprofit goes. Okay. Now, let me pull up. Minimize this, guys. Let me get back in my email because I didn't realize when I clicked on the link, it overrode the PowerPoint selection that wasn't ready. Okay. So if we look here, majority of us are going to use plus and advanced. Okay. And then obviously you can see discount at this time when I took these screenshots was 50%. All right. So I would always recommend that the nonprofits do the plus version. Inside of TechSoup, I believe this is the lowest version it offers to you. However, it's substantially cheaper through TechSoup. I just renewed it for a client for a whole year. I think they paid $152. Okay. Again, I don't know if that depends on what version of TechSoup you're in, but I just want to bring it to your attention. Okay. So because of that, we're going to do the plus version. We're going to click choose the plan. I personally don't teach payroll, so we are not going to do any payroll subscription. So continue without payroll. And then for training purposes today, I'm going to go ahead and sign in with an account we already have. And we're just following the wizard. So it wants, your information. So I'm going to stop sharing. Well, actually, you know what? I can do it without stop sharing. It doesn't matter. And then they want our address. So we're going to just do my address here, 503 Portage Lakes Drive. I agree to the subscription because you can't do it any other way. And then obviously we're going to go into our wizards. So for those of you that have an established nonprofit, you already probably have gone through this. This is just for training purposes, is obviously learning to select the package so it has the proper items and then going and setting everything up. Okay. Now, if you had desktop version prior to this data should already be populated because you ported the data in. So we're going to call this nonprofit training just for today. I'm going to say I'm new to this for training purposes today. Then it wants your industry, okay? So let's pick, well, let's do a fun one. Let's do ambulance service today. Nonprofit is the type of organization. And we'll say we do less than $1 million last year. I'm going to say I'm the bookkeeper or accountant, and I'm going to say I have 2 to 5 employees. These are all, I'm obviously am a bookkeeper and accountant, but we're making up the number of employees and things like that. We're going to skip some of this for now. We don't want to set up payments. We don't want to do anything with Square. So I'm just hitting skip on things to get us through. Again, these are just the setup wizards. It wants to try to sell you payroll again. We don't want payroll. Now it should take us to our dashboard, which has nothing on it because we haven't linked anything. We haven't done anything. All of that integration stuff was talked about in the 3 previous classes. So we won't talk about it today, other than to integrate your specific donor software and how that kind of works and what you're looking at and those types of things. Okay. So here's your dashboard. Bank transactions, again, we haven't linked anything. We did that in a previous class. You can see any invoices that you might have if you're looking at a glance. You can see your funnel based on not paid, paid, deposited, and cleared. Again, prompts you to do all the fun stuff. Okay. And again, you can add, delete, move all these widgets just the same as we've talked about prior in, the previous 3 classes. Okay. Now, this navigation bar you can see is popping up and down, where in the other software it stayed up all the time. Part of this is because there's a lot more going on your dashboard. So this is something that we kind of anticipate. And as you can see, certain things this is a newer looking platform than we have looked at in the past, just to put in perspective for you. Then from here, you also have this 3 buckets here that gives you more options as far as navigation goes. So, and then you have your log in and out button here. If you go into, let's go here. Nope, it's not going to take me where I want to go. There we go. If you go into a specific module, it looks just like it should. So let's hit. I'm going to load transactions just so it gets it to where we want it to go. Perfect. And then it looks just like it does on the other screen. Okay. And then obviously down here you have marketing, payroll, and HR if you wanted to add it later. Okay. So those are all the navigation bars you have. Obviously you have gear icons to adjust certain things, what you're looking for, but you only have this bar, your dashboard, and this one, where the other one you have a bunch more options. Okay. So the first thing we're going to really dive into now that we have an account is the budget module, okay? And the budget module for you guys in nonprofit world is really important because we either create an annual budget, you might create budgets for specific projects, and so you have to know the differentiation and what you're trying to track. And the budget is going to tie into what's actually being spent versus what we budgeted. Now, the budget module can be very basic, meaning you can take a total and it divides it equally by 12, or you can do it based on timing. So if you know that you have a lot more expenses in the beginning of the year, middle of the year, or end of the year, you can adjust it appropriately. So if you look over here, we want to look at our budget tab here. So let's do it from here to get it to populate in our bar here. Budgets. Okay, so you can create a budget or you can import a budget. If you import a budget, it can be from a Google Sheets or just an Excel document, okay? If you create a budget, it's going to ask you if you're creating a profit and loss budget or a balance sheet budget. So if you're trying to manage debt, credit cards, cash, those types of things, that's a balance sheet budget. If you're trying to manage overtures and income, then that's a profit and loss budget. And then you can tell it, right now we have QuickBooks set up to say we're a fiscal year, January through December, but if you're mid-year to mid-year, just make sure you update that in your settings, and then that will show your proper selection of time frame here, okay? If you want it consolidated or subdivided, and then if you want to pre-fill data, meaning that you have a previous year budget that you want to bring in, and then you only have to adjust a few numbers. So if your budget is pretty fixed, you can do that. We don't have any data populated in here, so there's no pre-fill data available. So we're going to hit next. Now, underneath accounts, this is going to show every account you have inside of QuickBooks, whether you're using it or not. It will show. Okay. Now you can hide the account. So if you don't want to see it, you can change your settings here where it says hide empty rows, which if I apply, there's going to be very little things in this because there's nothing filled in, right? If you want to show the empty rows, it's here. Now, if you go to download this or export it out, even if you've hidden the empty rows, they're going to show in your export. So I want to specify that. Okay. Now you can change your budget name. So 2025 budget. Okay. And that updates automatically. You can show actuals. You can do it by month, quarter, or year to make it so you can see pretty reports that you're reporting out. And then if you're doing it monthly, so say my budget for income, total income for the year is say 100,000. If I put it there, it's going to divide it equally. Okay. If I want it to be like in April, actually let's do June. In June, I know I do about 50,000 of that 100,000 because we run a huge event. Okay. Now see how it totaled this one and changed the number because I made this number huge, right? So you can type on all of these and it will give you a total. And so you still can check your totals, but have it accurate by month. Okay. Obviously down here, you would fill in the same thing for all these bills. Things that probably are going to be like a lump sum as your rent's probably the same for 12 months. Your utilities are going to be pretty consistent if you're on budget stuff or fixed rates. If you know you're not, then obviously in the winter, you need to make those numbers bigger and those types of things. And then you can save and close. And you'll see the budget is here. You'll see who worked on it last. If you have more than one person working on it, you can archive budgets. You can run the report from here. Again, we don't have a lot to see on this report because we didn't put any data in, but it does exist and it will show you. So you can, bring this report back. Let's go back into our budget area. If you need to edit it because you get partway through it, feel free to jump in and do more adjustments. So for repairs and maintenance, we're anticipating 25,000 for the year. Our utilities average about 10,000 for the year. Our payroll is our biggest expense in most nonprofits. But it doesn't have a payroll account in QuickBooks and we didn't create it yet, so we won't be able to do that. But just gives you guys some ideas of some of the things that are going to be, you can utilize in here. And then again, you can look at your annual total here. So total net income 106 of the fake number of 141 that we put in. Okay. You can see it says auto save, so it is saving. So if for some reason you got pulled away from the computer, as long as the auto save is on, it's going to save it. If the auto save was not on, you could lose the data. So just always make sure you at least hit save before you go and get this updated that it was saved successfully. Now you can have obviously more than one budget going at a time. So cash in the account, we keep 25,000 in it for January. Mhm. And just because it's yelling at us because it's not even on both sides, we'll make it even on both sides. That way we can save something here. So you'll see on the balance sheet one, it says BS, so you know it's balance sheet, and then it'll tell you assets versus liabilities plus equity, and then make sure that you're balanced. So if you're not balanced, it yells at you to try to keep you on the straight and narrow. And then if we hit save and close, you'll see that now it tells you the difference here. Again, who modified it and things like that. So you have the ability to keep an eye on this and manage it as it's being developed. Okay. Do we have any questions about the budget tab? It looks like we have a couple questions. I'm going to go over here. Says, would you have a seminar for profits too? That would basically be the seminar that we've been running the previous 3 classes. Not that it's not specifically for nonprofits or for profits, it's for any QuickBooks user. This one is designed for nonprofits just to talk more of their language, as it was something that was requested. But pretty much it kind of toggles that accounting is accounting no matter what the industry is. Jim, I would recommend reaching out to the score guys, and they can give you the link as to where to find those recordeds for the previous classes. Joe, budget BS means balance sheet. So it's for the assets, uh, liabilities, and equity. So debt, cash, fixed assets, those types of things. But the BS means balance sheet. It says, can you show a report with an actual versus budget amount monthly? So that the board can see where you're at currently. So yes. So if you right here is your look at it. So if you click on here and it will open the budget versus actual, which doesn't have a lot of data on it right now, but you can change the time frame that you want to look at it for with these buttons here. Cash or accrual, pending your options. And then this is obviously the report. So it'll tell you if you're over or under budget, red or green is going to be there, and then percentage. It says, can you sit down with an accountant to help you set this up? Yes, absolutely. As long as the accountant knows how to use the QuickBooks software, that's absolutely something that can be done. So it says, could you create a budget to track spending on a project? The answer is yes. However, it's going to show all your categories of expenses, anything that you ever have listed on your chart of accounts on that project. So a lot of it's going to be zeroed, and it could be a lot of data to shift through. If you want to track a project specifically, I would recommend using the project tab, which I don't teach in this class because I teach it in the expert level class. The answer is yes, you can do it, but it just has a lot of stuff to dig through sometimes. So using it in the project tab might be better. I will show you in this class under reports how to pull reports maybe for specific items you're looking at. So that might help track that a little bit better too. And Kim, no problem that you're not a nonprofit yourself. You do bookkeeping for nonprofits, so this class will be beneficial to you no matter what. Any other questions about the budgeting tab at all? Okay, perfect. So we're gonna go back over and do our little dots here, and we're gonna go into the reporting area, and we're gonna look at standard reports to start, okay? So obviously, as you can see, there's tons and tons and tons of report options here in QuickBooks. QuickBooks makes an assumption that we're going to look at these three here, okay? Now, that being said, some of you might see like statement of activity or statement of cash flows instead of balance sheet and profit and loss. They mean the same thing. It's just the floofy language they put in there. Another example of that would be customers versus donors. They're the same thing. As a nonprofit, your donors are your customers. Some of those types of things as well. Okay. So for a profit and loss, if you want to click on the profit and loss, and obviously we don't have any data in here, so these are going to be empty reports, right? They're going to have generic information in them, all zeros, okay? We have a lot of things as a nonprofit that we try to be able to view, okay? We try to be able to view an event we ran and how it did. Did it make us money? We might be trying to view a grant that we got and how much of the grant money is spent. We might be trying to view a specific donor. They donated for a specific item, and we need to make sure that the expenses tie out and we've spent the money. Or we need proof of that so that we can send it off to say we spent the money, right? So a lot of times when that happens, I'm going to go ahead and click us to classic view. It's just easier to see, okay? um, you want to use this customize tab, okay? So you can still adjust what time frame you're looking at, okay? I look at columns and rows, and I want to look at filters. Okay, filters is going to be my big thing. So if you need to know what a specific customer usually is a donor, and what they gave you and what you used the money on, you can click on customer and then select, instead of all, you would select a specific customer. Now, we don't have any customers created, so that option doesn't show here, okay? So we're gonna select all. Now, same thing may go for a vendor. If you're looking to see how much you paid the YMCA for whatever summer camps, swim lessons, things like that that you might doing to be active inside of the community, you can look up just by that vendor to see how much money you had spent with them, okay? Obviously, as you have additional things activated inside of the portal, you will have additional options. So, for example, if you had classes turned on, which we will talk about later, classes would show here too. And then you could filter by class and look up a specific class you might have. So, for example, some of my nonprofits have a project or have a programs class, and then they have sub programs for everything that they run that's in that lump sum program number. Okay. And so you might need to look up by an individual program, by an individual customer or donor, and then you can see, did that program go and how much was it? Okay. So if you click run report, then inside of here, it takes out everything that isn't in those customization features. So it would only show you the items that you're specifically looking for versus a broad report of everything. Okay. So to kind of go backwards to that question that was like, can you use projects to track specific things? Well, if you're entering it properly by tracking it by a donor, a program, or something, you wouldn't necessarily need a budget to do that. You could pull the data from here. Or again, you can use the project tool. You can do the same thing on your balance sheet, but obviously your balance sheet is cash and fixed assets and things like that. So you might not have as customized needs as far as this sheet goes. Because as you can see, my cash balance is negative because we haven't put anything in, but we've been writing, doing random items against it, right? So your balance sheet is going to show how much money did I have this year versus last year or versus the previous month. Did I make any major purchases? Do we have any debt, loans, credit cards, things like that, right? There really is no equity in a nonprofit, as uh, it's a nonprofit for a reason. So you're not like putting, as an executive director, you don't put your own money into the organization. The organization is funding for it, right? So your equity, the only line item that's going to be used is retained earnings in there. There shouldn't be any beginning balance equity. None of that kind of stuff should exist, no owner's draw, no members equity, things like that. Okay. Just to put in perspective for you. And as you can see here, although we don't have much data in here, you can see that it's trying to tell you what type of accounts you have, and those types of things. If you open QuickBooks and you start it, say your nonprofit's been around for years and you say, I want to start as of January 1st or make a clean break, you might have an account called Open Balance Equity. Consult your accountants on how to clean that up and get rid of it, because it shouldn't really sit on there. And that just means whenever you started your QuickBooks and a bank account had money in it or a credit card had a balance on it. Okay. Now in this report tab, although it's not starred, if you use this search bar, our handy dandy search bar, you can pull the budget versus actual reports from here too. And again, you can do it by whatever time frame you want. This is doing it by month. So you can access it without being inside of the budget module. And really you could favorite it if you would like. So favorite means you mark the star. So if I go down here and find the budget versus actual, I'm going to star it. And now it's going to be up here. So any reports that you need to kind of look at, that your board, your members, your committee, anybody wants to see, feel free to star them so they're right at the top for you. Okay. Any questions about the reports? Kate says, which one is equivalent to the cash flow statement? That would be the P&L. But you can also pull specific cash flow statements, Katie, inside of here. So if you cash flow overview, a planner, it is a module inside of this QuickBooks that you can see it. But if you're just looking to see the money you took in and the money went out where, that's a P&L. Joseph says, can you export and email one of the reports like a P&L? So if you go in here, switch back to classic view because it's easier to see. So you can export as an Excel or PDF, or if you click this email guy, click email, and then you can do it directly from inside of here. You would have to put the email in every time you want to do this, though. There is no way to save an email address for reporting from what I have experience with. It doesn't acknowledge it. It doesn't prompt you to select a customer. You just have to manually type it in. But then it'll say your P&L and then here's your generic whatever. So you can change any of this information if you want. But yes, you can do both. You can export Excel, PDF, or you can hit this, you can print, you can email, say it as PDF. Change it. I know in the world of nonprofit, the goal is to streamline what you're doing because we do so much reporting and so many checks and balances. So the more integration you can do with QuickBooks between your outside services, and the more you can make sure your reports are accurate, the easier it is to just export the data and send it where you need to. Okay. All right, so now we're going to take our first 10-minute break right now. We're running just a few minutes ahead of schedule, but that's okay. I want to take a 10-minute break now, and then when we come back, we're going to look at our book review. Our book review is a tool that, as the executive director or primary admin, it's how you can communicate with the person that's maybe doing your bookkeeping. It creates checks and balances. You can create due dates and all sorts of fun stuff. If while we're on this 10-minute break, you have any additional questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. I will look there first before we dive back in. Otherwise, I will see you guys back at 9:53. So what we're going to talk about next is,
Hey, Ann,
yes.
this is John. There was a comment or a question in the chat, and the one says, "Are you taking any new clients? And if so, how can I contact you?" I assume you'll show your contact information towards the end, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then there was a long question above it from John, which I asked him if he could move it over to the Q&A, but if you can look at the chat
No
just for
problem.
a
Let me take a
second.
peek here. John, long question, very detailed. This is perfect. Yes, when we talk about grant tracking, it's gonna be the second to last module we talk about because it's one of the ones that's gonna create the most questions. We will talk about how you do this. I work directly with a nonprofit that gets federal funding as like a reimbursement. And so they have to do the same thing. You have to say you're getting the money in, that you spent the money out, and how you spent it. So we will cover that absolutely towards the end of the class. We have a question. It says, is it possible to run a P&L report with multiple classes selected? Yes, that is correct. I will show you what that looks like too when we get into the classes. Okay, so we're going to talk about the tool called Book Review. So this is the portal we've been working inside of as a user, okay? So we don't have over here an option that says book review, reconcile, accountant, nothing along those lines, okay? And I just wanted to show you, if you try to look up book review, it's going to prompt you to add an accountant because this is a tool specified for your accountant. um, your accountant in a nonprofit, the person closing your books every month. So it might not necessarily be a real CPA, but it might be your actual bookkeeper or financial person, and they need to be logged in here as an accountant. Good news is you can have more than one accountant in QuickBooks based on the subscription we're working in. So you can have your CPA who's preparing the tax return and the person that's closing your books every month as an accountant. Okay, that's just the way it works. All right. Um, so if you click add an accountant, you want to go under accounting firms, and you could see I'm already added. I did that so that we didn't have to waste the time during the training for that. Okay. Now the accountant portal does look a little bit different. So I happen to leave it up in this tab over here. So this is what the accountant portal looks like. And as you can see, look, we have accounting as an option. You have all these options here. Okay. You have expenses, all these options here. You know, the list goes on. Okay. And as you can see, I was just working with it. So one of the things that you're really going to focus on inside of here is the book review. So type in book review. Okay. Now I typed it in the search module because I want people to get used to using the search module because it's the shortcut way, right? But as I found it, it tells you it's underneath accounting, and it's the second option called book review. Okay. So you can get it from both spots. Again, you have to be an accountant. If I toggle back over to the other screen that we were working in, okay, and I go to accounting, I do not have a book review option. It is not here. If you search book review, it does not come up. You have to be as an accountant. Okay. The book review. It's going to tell you what needs to be done. Transactions not categorized, transactions without payees. This is really important because we harp on making sure everybody puts detail in here. Undeposited funds, unapplied payments. It's going to show you personal activities, things that need to be done. Okay. It's going to tell you what's reconciled. when it's never been reconciled. When was the last time it was reconciled? Did you load a statement inside of here? What are the outstanding transactions that are not categorized? Did you do loans? Did you review reports? And then you have a final review. This is going over the things that you need to look at. Again, balance sheet, profit, loss, whatever you set up the stuff inside of here. Okay. And then you can hit wrap it up, prepare reports, report package, close the books. Okay. You could do a request. You need to create a request. I need to ask somebody for something. Okay. I need to ask the client for something. So this would be missing receipt would be a good one for nonprofits, because we all know our teams are great at losing receipts, not supplying receipts. I'm going to make the due date of this going to be the 31st because I need them by the end of the month. I need all credit card receipts for, just making up a name, Amber. Okay. And then share with client, and you want to notify the client, and I'm going to hit share. Okay. So now I've sent a request from this side. Now let's go see what that request looks like over here. Okay, so our search tool did not do so well with the request over there. Or maybe I need to hit refresh. Let's see. So if you go under your bar here, accounting, my accountant, because that would be who's requesting. Remember, they're in here as an accountant. And then you can say missing receipts, and it tells you to do. It doesn't notify you though. I'm kind of surprised. So you would have to go into this module to know that they had a request to you. I haven't seen, and we'll keep an eye on it if an email pops through or anything, but I haven't seen anything that's come through. And then from here, you can click on this. You can load the documents. You can add a comment and kick it all back. And then again, you go back to this side and they would have information over here. Okay. Under my accountant over here, there's the request that you sent to. You can use this to share statements, so they don't need to log into the bank and pull the information. You can load them up here. They can load them from this side. You can load them from this side. Share documents. It's a secure way to send it without emailing it, those types of things. But as you can see, the portals look similar and yet different. Book review is the biggest difference. Okay. Now it says there's something to do. We have transactions. So it knows you can't do the next step before, you can't close anything until you do this. So QuickBooks is prompting you to do this. You could clean up if you need to do certain things. You can edit time frames. And again, set up, create the things you want. Beginning balances, make sure all this stuff is done. If you need to connect, disconnect, manage chart of accounts, all of it. Everything can be done inside of here from them. For a lot of nonprofits, we tend to have like 12 business days after the first of the month is when our financials are due. So you can set all of that up, and then you can actively check and make sure your team is working on it throughout that time frame to make sure it gets done. Okay. This tool is really cool for that purpose specifically. It stinks that it's only active for accountants, because we all know that we have somebody inside of our organization 90% of the time doing this, or you as the owner are doing it. But even as the owner, you don't have the book review option unless you add yourself as an accountant, which does seem silly. But there are other tools that the accountants can do that even a primary owner or primary admin can't do. For example, undo reconciliations. You can't undo them unless you're the accountant. I don't know why. That seems silly, because if you make a mistake, why would you have to call your accountant to undo your own mistake? It's just the way that it is. Maybe it's a checks and balances thing. That one doesn't quite make sense to me. this doesn't make sense to me either. This should definitely be active to anybody that you would assign this module to. I love this module, by the way. I think it's fabulous. I recommend using it. I use it for my specific clients. It just makes your life a lot easier. Any questions about book review, why we would use it? Okay, perfect. So now let's talk about connecting our softwares. Okay, so I'm going to go back into our normal side, QuickBooks here. Go back over here. Let's click on our dashboard. So there are a lot of softwares that integrate into QuickBooks. Some of them are fabulous. Some of them stink. Okay, that's the best way to put it, stink. Some of them take a lot of work to be able to do the implementation. Some are going to require a bridging software. Okay, I'm not going to talk a lot about bridging software because it's not my area of expertise. When I talk about this, so for example, if you do Donor Perfect is going to bring data in. It's going to bring you a very skeleton piece of all of the data you have in Donor Perfect, okay? In Donor Perfect, you're going to have the customer name, you're going to have the revenue stream it came from, you're going to have the category it's done, you might have a class on it, you might have a sub-solicitor, a main solicitor, and so on. In QuickBooks, you're going to get a class, an amount, category. And then underneath your memo or detail on your deposits, you're going to see where the revenue came from and maybe a customer name if it's assigned. That's it. That's all you get. But you can create all these other modules inside of Donor Perfect. Okay. So I just want you to understand that when you integrate it into QuickBooks, you're getting a sliver of what you guys are actually tracking. Okay. Why it's not more, I don't know. Big question I get in the nonprofit world is, why is Donor Perfect different than QuickBooks? There's a lot of variation there. Depends on how you do Donor Perfect. If Donor Perfect is your cash accounting, meaning you're only putting money you've actually gotten into it, and QuickBooks you're creating invoices and you do accrual method, it will never tie together because one is based on cash you got and one is based on cash you're going to get. So QuickBooks should show more if it's based on cash you're going to get versus cash you receive. Okay. So I emphasize that because there's a lot of variations there and it can be an area that gets confusing. So you just have to remember what you're trying to do and focus on it. Okay. So first step, I want to show you guys a deposit. So if you go under sales, let's go to payout. You know what? Actually, let's do it here. I just want to show you the deposit screen. Oh, it wants us to do all these things. Let's do it this way then. Let's go into accounting. Let's go to transactions, bank transactions. Let's go to the bank register. And then down here where it says add a check, let's switch it to a deposit. I'm going to put $1 in here for just to be able to open it up because I have to give it something to save. And then I'm going to open it for us. So, okay. So click edit, open it. So inside of your deposit sheet, you're going to have an account. This is going to be your ledger. This is any of these accounts here. So in our world, it's going to be any income account if you're putting a deposit in. Money we received from what? Okay. That could be fundraising, programs, grants, board members, contributions, sponsorships, whatever your organization collects money from, merchandise sales, I don't know. Okay. That's going to be what's listed here. Donor Perfect. If you put the deposit in Donor Perfect, it will populate based on the account. The description here is then that Abby Joe from Safe Save, that tells me that, right? Then it's going to tell me the amount. that we received. Okay. And that's it. The payment method is irrelevant in this case because of the way it's going to sync. A reference number is not there, but you don't get any of this other sub solicitation, nothing. Okay. That's the only information that QuickBooks is going to pull from there. Count, description, dollar amount, and class if you have class. Okay. We'll talk about the classes as we implement them towards the end. Okay. So that's the downfall. All right. Now, how do you implement it? How do you sync your softwares? Okay. So let's do sync software. Some of you might have, hold on, let it load real quick. Down over here, you might have 9 dots that look like these dots, only there's 9 of them. And if you click on it, it gives you the ability to open your softwares that are there. We don't have that based on where we're at here. Why? I don't know. I would think it would be the same, but it's not. So we have to go and look at, let's see here. Is it going to be under marketing? Did we stick it here? Okay, letting it load. There we go. Perfect. So you can see, nope, this is not going to let you sync anything either. Okay, let's do, where is my software sync portal here on the new, and I apologize guys, this is the newest of the newest portal, so I've only worked in here like 3 times, because as you can see, I'm in the old portal a lot of times. And I don't know why it's not similar at all. But for training purposes, let's work in what you guys potentially could see because it's what you guys are working on. Mm, There we go. So instead of 9 dots on this portal, it's 3 dots and it says my integrations. And I don't have anything integrated. But if you do have software integrated, again, Donor Perfect integrates, you would see whatever's integrated here. So if you want to find tools that integrate based on your industry, you can click on it and it's going to give you all these options of things that can integrate based on what you're using. Okay. You can also search donor receipts, donor statements, donor hub, CRMs, all of it. Okay. Now, when you integrate with a software, I'm going to use another example, Shopify. So Shopify, for a lot of people, is going to be tracking revenue. It's going to have an accounts receivable, and it's going to have like an inventory piece, pending what you do. Okay. That being said, this integration right here is only going to be a revenue integration. Majority of the things that are here are only revenue integrations, meaning that it's only going to show you income that's been deposited. Okay. If you're looking for additional pieces, that's when the bridge software comes into play. There's a software that you put your software into, and then it bridges data to convert it over into QuickBooks to bring over the accounts receivable side, the inventory adjustments in, and versus you doing all of that stuff manually. There are a million, and I mean that, a million options for that bridge software, which is why it's not my area of expertise. But I have helped clients solve the problem of well, it houses all of this, but why won't it? QuickBooks built it to be basic. QuickBooks Online is basic. It's supposed to be user-friendly, streamlined, integrated, and basic, okay? It's not a bad thing. They did that on purpose. That was their entire marketing tool here. So just know if you're trying to track more information than that, what you're going to have integrated here is 99% of the time only for the revenue coming in, okay? And again, select as you may. Majority of us in nonprofit world are using CRMs and Donor Perfect, and Donor Perfect might be your CRM. And I tell people that, you know, Donor Perfect should be your end all be all, and QuickBooks should be your check safe, meaning that it's a good way to make sure stuff's getting marked paid. If you're creating invoices in QuickBooks, it's a good way to make sure that the money that you're actually depositing is properly coming through. You know, you have to pick something that is your end all be all, whatever that might be on your end. It just depends on who's in what role and how that is going. Okay. Any questions about the software? Sadly, I don't have access to a software to go through the connection process. But for example, if you click on one of these, like let's click on MailChimp because it's easy. It's pretty user friendly to follow their wizards to get it synced up. So let's not do MailChimp. MailChimp maybe isn't the best one. Let's do like an Amazon. So get integration now. And then it says which channels do you use? Do you want to turn on inventory? You can click yes. That doesn't mean it's going to work. And they do constantly try to better this portal just so we're on the same page. It asks you how far back you want to go. Then it's going to ask you to choose, whichever. What your Shopify store is. Now I don't have one, but I'm going to put just the name in here and let it do its thing. So this shop is currently not available. So it is aware that it's not an actual shop. Okay. So like I said, it's really easy to do the integration. There used to be fees associated with the integration. That's depends on what you're using. There still may be fees associated. It might not be a QuickBooks fee. It might be that you're paying for the bridging software. It might be that your software on the other side, like that it requires it. For Donor Perfect does not have a fee to sync with QuickBooks. But I know like sometimes Square does. I don't know if Shopify does. Obviously those are kind of all one-on-one activities there. Any questions about that? Okay. So let's dive in and do grant tracking, because grant tracking is going to be a big one. And it's going to take a little bit of time because I want to make sure you guys understand that. So when we look at the grants inside of QuickBooks, it's not the easiest thing in the world for us to manage. Okay. So what people end up doing is if you go into the customer tab, and we obviously don't have any customers. Okay. I'm going to create a new customer. So my customer might be federal DOJ grant. Okay. This federal grant for, training purposes is a 3-year grant. Okay. So I'm then going to create another customer that says year 1. You guys can do actual dates, 2024 to 2025, DOJ grant. Okay. Now this one, I need to make a sub customer of the federal DOJ grant. Okay. And I'm going to hit save. So your grant is a customer in QuickBooks. Your grant is a customer. If you get grants year after year from the same person, then date it. Portage Community Foundation, 2025, blah, blah, blah grant. Right? Huntington Bank, blah, 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 2025 grant. Right? So your main person is who lended you the money, right? And then you can have a sub customer of the timing of that money. Why is this important? Well, if you get money year after year after year and you put it all under the main customer, when you go to need to pull the data later, it could be hard to find. There's the first one. Okay. If you get multiple revenue streams from the same person, you need sub customers to track the different revenue streams, meaning they sponsor more than one event throughout your year. Okay. If you're trying to track it by program, that could be benefit to have the sub customer. Okay. But your grants go into QuickBooks as customers. Okay. Step one. You can then do grants as classes as well. Now we don't have classes activated in here yet. So let's go into our setup here, settings. And let's go into accounts and settings. And I believe this is under advanced. Here's where you would change your fiscal year, by the way. And here's where you have class tracking. So we want to turn on classes. Warn me when there's no class selected. That would be ideal. Okay. So then underneath here, if we go to settings, we open up all of this. Let's go to all lists. And let's go to classes. So we have no classes. So what I would do is I would create a class, DOJ grant. I don't need this class to have a year because I'm going to use this class for 3 years, right? So now that I've got this set up, let's enter a transaction that would go towards this grant, right? Income or expense is irrelevant. Let's enter something to show towards this. So if we go to our bank transaction tab and we have category, things that are sticking here, right? So let's say that for Facebook, which we're going to do here, we're going to do Facebook. It shortcutted us. So the account can be advertising and marketing. Okay. Your product and service, you might not need. I use accounts, not products or services, just so we're on the same page. Your class is going to be the DOJ grant, right? But I don't see here, it's not prompting us to have our customer. Let me hit edit split. Hold on a sec. It should prompt us for a customer. Let me hit refresh. Try this again. All right, let me figure out why our customer is not populating. Customer overview. Customers. Okay, so he does exist and he has a sub customer. All right, let's see if it does it. Let's try another way. Let's see. Let me go into view register. Let's click here. Oh, my donor or customer is not populating at all. Let's see here. You can see now our class populates, but it's not. All right, let's try logging out and log back in because it is a web-based platform. See if we can get it to register. Here. All right, now let's go back into accounting, go back to transactions, bank transactions. And let's click on one. Well, this is crazy. It does not have the customer. All right, let's see here. Let's go back into register and see if it still doesn't have it here. Well, it doesn't. I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, so let's do a couple. Let's try. Let's go kind of work around it. So our class is DOJ, like we talked about, and say we're going to do a payment. We'll just do $100 for training purposes. And then this is going to be under advertising. And we're going to hit save. And then I'm going to hit edit here. Nope, that just clones it. Item detail. Huh. Okay, hit save and close. And then let's look under, let's do this. Let's do, instead of a check, let's do a deposit. And then the payee, just for purposes today, we're going to just stick with Facebook. DOJ, deposit, 100. And then the account we will do, we're looking for an income account, as you can see here, services, and then hit save. And then let's go over here and let's go to customers. Let's go to customers. And then let's create an invoice with this customer. You shouldn't have to select a customer, just so we're on the same page. I don't want this. Not now. Create an invoice. I don't want to set up any payments. Okay. Let me X out of this, X out of this, so it looks like the screen here. And then we're gonna do services just to do it. We're gonna put an amount in here, 1,500. The class is something that we need, but they don't need. And then save. I'm gonna X out of here. And then now let's go over here. Let's go to reports. Not my report option. There it is. I was like, reports. Let's go to a profit and loss or an income statement. And then switch to classic view, customize, filters. So see, now we have a customer in here. So I can change this to be DOJ. And then now we have class in here. And now I can filter this to be just DOJ. And I can run report. And let's change this. All dates. So you can see the 1,500 here. But I don't show our expense there. So let me go ahead and customize again. And then oh, okay. Huh. QuickBooks is not playing nice with me today. Let's go back to that transaction then. Let me go in here, categorize. Let's change these dated. Let's date them to the first. Maybe it's because they're dated today. That's why it's not populating. First, save. First, save. All right, now let's go back to report and see if we can't get it to pull what we want. But you're seeing how you have to play around with it a little bit while you're learning the reports. You can then make these reports memorized, is going to be where I get with that. So again, as we loaded specific things in here, I'm gonna hit select all for purposes today, and then class-wise, DOJ. Run for. Nope. Nope. So it's not working. Downfall of QuickBooks is that it is a web-based platform, so you are at liberty to fight with it a little bit. Ideally, when you filter this specifically, as you can see here, customer, I selected all. I only have 2 customers, the DOJs and the DOJs. Okay. Class DOJ. All right. To prove we're not crazy, by the way, is again here. It's not showing that $100 expense that we put in that should be showing. So I know because we're going through this process trying to train on it right now, right? So if I go back over here, you go back into your transactions and I go to the bank register. It does have a class / location. So I do not know why it's not prompting in that report. It's in the time frame of the report. It's classed. Again, so it's not a perfect system, but the goal is that these get set up and they have a class and they have a customer / sub customer based on what you're trying to do. Now, our other downfall is that it doesn't prompt me to select the customer in here. And had I been able to select the customer in here, it probably would populate on that report. Why that's not doing it, I don't know. Just to put in perspective, I have no idea why this does not update to say we have customers to be able to accept the customer, because you should be able to select a donor in any type of transaction inside of here, donor customer. You don't have to, but you should be able to. Okay. Now it looks like we're getting some questions. So let me kind of jump over to the questions here. It says, how do you track member donations? The same way. The member becomes a customer / donor inside of QuickBooks, and then you apply the payments or deposits to them. I will say that I don't do every single member, every single donation, every single funder inside of QuickBooks. We do it for most of the nonprofits I work with inside of the software they're housing the CRM in. So Donor Perfect would be the example there. It can be done in QuickBooks. And I recommend doing it for your major people or anybody you're creating an invoice for. But as long as you've got it in another software, it's okay too. But either way. Danielle, let me know that answers your question. Joseph says, vendor customer project tab, can you select and pull a customer? Yes. If you're in the project tab, you can tie it to whomever you need to as far as a customer. The project becomes a sub customer to show that you're doing work with this customer in each individual project. And then John says, thank you for walking us through this. As you show us this situation, remind us which subscription level you're in. We're in the plus subscription. So it's the third one. There's self, essential, plus, advanced. We're right now playing in the plus version. 90% of you that are purchasing from TechSoup, I think, are in the advanced version, just to put in perspective. Because I think they bought the best of the best through TechSoup. But we're working right now in the plus version. So 1 grade down from there. And John, you have to be in at least this version to have the classes to be able to do the tracking for the classes. All right, now I'm going to look, because it bothers me that this does not show the things I want to see. So I'm going to look under accounts and settings here, and I'm going to just check a couple things as far as advanced settings. So here's where you can change it. So client, customer, donor, guest, member, patient. So donor, accrual method. Oop. Accrual method is fine. I don't care about marketing preferences. First month of the fiscal year for us is June, or I'm sorry, is July. July to June. And then accrual method, hit save. Tax form. Even though we selected 990, it did not save that. So let's do that. I don't, if you use account numbers, this is how you turn them on and off. I don't personally, but you can. I was looking to make sure that it comes up with the customer information. That is all I'm looking for. Since we can't, that module's not coming up on its own. You know what? Let's check and see if it's over on this side. Let's go here. Transactions. Yeah. So crazy enough, on the accountant side, you can click type of transaction, donor project, vendor donor or project. But you should have both. You should be able to put a payee and a donor. So why did it merge it? So no, it's not any better here. Because you need to be able to put that the vendor is QuickBooks, but that it's tied to a donor. Let me stop sharing for 1 second. Let me try one other thing. Because it really bothers me that you guys cannot see this. And now I want to see. Show you what the transactions look like when we're able to do all of the things and make sure theirs hadn't changed. I was just in here yesterday. Okay, so theirs had not changed. Okay, so let me go ahead and I am going to share my screen again. Here, share. So this is what it looks like in a perfect world. Okay, you have a donor, vendor, donor, project, and account, and then you have a donor slash project, and then you have a class. So this is the bucket we're missing right here, this one. To be able to select somebody, we're missing this bucket. I don't know why. So I will figure this out and send out like an ad lib as to why this isn't populating, because we have this one, we have this one, we have this one, and we have this one, but we don't, this is the missing piece to select that you paid Facebook, but that it goes on a specific project that you're trying to do. Why, I don't know, but this is what we're missing. This is what I'm trying to show you guys, is that you can select it and then pull the reports to be specific to the things that you're trying to do. And I apologize. QuickBooks is just, it didn't load it. I don't know what the deal is. We'll keep playing with it as we're continuing to go through the training, because obviously, hopefully it fixes itself at some point. But as you can see, it does exist. I'm not crazy. But I don't know why we can't see it on our end when we log in with the nonprofit side. But that's the way you get the reports to work. So the reason we're not seeing that $100 is because it's applying it to Facebook and not applying it to that customer, even though it's applying it to the class. And so it's not populating on the report we're pulling because it's not showing the absolutes. And the goal of doing that type of filterization or customization is that it's pulling only the things that are on the absolutes. Okay. Luckily, because it's fresh, it's something we're doing. We're aware that it's not pulling the data, but if you looked at this months down the road, unless you went in digging through the activity that's on those reports, you may or may not know that that is missing, and that defeats the whole purpose. Now you can see, because I decided to change the verb in the settings as to donor. Now you can see it says statement of financial position and statement of activity. Now it's starting to talk in the nonprofit versus just customer profit and loss and whatever else. Again, internal things that you get to determine what you want to see. When I send financials like this to the board, I tell them this is your profit and loss statement. This is your balance sheet. Because if you don't, sometimes they don't know. I've been asked for a balance sheet from a board before and they had it in front of them. They just didn't know because it wasn't called a balance sheet. So ebbs and flows as to who's on your board, what you're looking at, what your your committee team, all those types of things want and or need. Okay. Again, if you're working, hopefully you're in classic view and then you can hit custom. So if I do this, let's see if I filter just by a class, if we can get it to populate. Let's try, since it's not the absolute. Hey, there it is. But because I can't put a customer on this, it won't show on the other type of report. And it still doesn't show it here as an option. So, but it does populate. So if you filter at least by one item instead of two items, you're getting an accurate report that you can see. And then when it comes to creating that as a memorized report, so if I do filter, because I know I'm going to pull this for those of us that have federal funding, you pull these every quarter, every month, making sure you're spending the money appropriately or how often you can pull the money down, right? You can make this a memorized report. So save customization. And I could say this is my DOJ grant report. And I'm going to hit save. Now, if I go back to my report list, it should populate as a DOJ. Right there, DOJ. So it does come up. Now, let's see if we go back to the reports. Again, just showing you miscellaneous customization features you can do. Where does it go when you create it originally? So that you can star it so that it stays at the top. Just briefly scanning. DOJ. Under reports. Well, I don't see it in our list after briefly scanning. However, I can search it, so it does exist. But I would like to star it. That would be the only thing, so that it would stay at the top for you. And you would do this for every grant, every project you're maybe trying to determine if you made money on that project. Again, your projects could have subclasses. A lot of times when we build the QuickBooks, your classes are the items that your CPA needs to see for tax purposes. So admin, fundraising, programs, grants, the three areas that are on the tax return are admin, fundraising, and programs. And then there's a fourth bucket, it's just kind of a catch-all type of thing. So you tend to build the classes, but then there are things internally that you need to see. Like I ran a program called Polar Express. Well, did I make money on it? Well, we don't know. But if we created a class and put the expenses classed to Polar Express, we're keeping expenses in programs, but we're also giving us the ability to see the internal picture to pull a report like this, where you're only looking at a snapshot. Okay. Now, QuickBooks only allows you to have so many classes. It only allows you to have 40 classes in this subscription. So use that wisely, obviously. There's no limit on customers. So that doesn't tend to be a problem. And there is no limit on chart of accounts for nonprofits like there are in the others. So you can have as many count numbers as you needed. Any questions about grant tracking, how you set it up, why you set it up, being able to pull the custom reports when they work, obviously. Okay, perfect. So let's take our next 10-minute break. Still running a few minutes ahead of schedule. We'll come back at 10:53. This is our last break before we finish everything up. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I also found a really good video that I can share with you guys at the very end that goes into just reiterating the things I'm explaining about the grant tracking. Sadly, this is the best patch we have as far as getting what we need from a grant perspective inside of QuickBooks is by creating them as customers. Feel free to leave anything in the chat, and then we'll be back in 10 minutes. It says, can we use other language? Is that what you're trying? Give them I'll give them an opportunity to bring that back to respond to that here in just a second. But it doesn't look like we have any other questions, so we will keep moving along. So we're going to talk about class usage. Okay. We briefly talked about how you activate it. I just want to kind of go over it again. Let's get back into our normal portal here. So you click on our three icons, you go to settings, it's under accounts and settings, it's under advanced, and then you have to turn it on. You can turn on locations too. I don't tend to use locations, but I do use classes. To me, they're one and the same. That's why I don't turn on both. Okay. So then once you turn them on, then if you look here again and you go to settings to open this lovely exploratory thing and you go to lists, you can see all your classes here. Okay. Now I'm going to hit new and I'm going to create the class admin. Okay. And then I'm going to create another class. We're going to create programs. And we're going to create another one called fundraising. And then we're going to add underneath programs, we're going to say water safety, if I can spell. I'm going to make that a subclass of programs. Okay. So now you can see. So DOJ, again, I don't need to make a subclass of it. However, I can create grants as a program or as a class, and then I can make DOJ by editing it a subclass of grants because that's what it is. So now let me go back over here and I'm going to go into accounting and I'm going to go to transactions and bank transactions. And I'm going to categorize a couple random things just to put them in the classes so that we can pull a report and we can see what that kind of looks like. All right. So Facebook class, I'm going to call that admin for marketing. Microsoft. And you click here. If you click add, it adds Microsoft for you without typing. And then you can do this. And then I'm going to make this one an admin class. And then let's go down here. We'll say this Circle K. We're going to call this a program. I'm going to use my cheat wizard here to add Circle K. And this is a program expense, which is a account we don't have created yet. So let's create this. Or don't create it. Let's see here. Red. There we go. Type it in for a third time, guys. All right, and this is going to be an expenditure, and this is going to be under other business expenditures. Okay, so Circle K. And then underneath here, personally, I do not use tags, so ignore your tags. They're also a feature that's going away. I would say ice or picnic. Okay, and then this is going to be programs. Programs, and then let's find another one that we can do. Let's do Walmart. So let's add Walmart. Our little cheat guy. Walmart. We can leave it as job supplies. And we're going to say this is for grants. Okay. And we need one more for fundraising. Ooh, excuse me. Let's go to Staples. And that's office supplies, and we're gonna call this fundraising. And then I'm gonna, underneath memo here, flyer for event. Okay. And then hit. All right, so I've added something in kind of all of our buckets just to get it to show in our reports. So you click over here, we would go into reports. Reports are right there. Standard reports again. So you can do a statement of activity by class. Admin, grants, DOJ, total for grants, programs, fundraising, and non-specified. These are things that we never tied to anything. So if you are looking to make sure that everything is tied to a item, a class, then if you have anything in non-specified, you need to move it. Okay, so you could click on whatever's in this column and open it and select a class. And then you can see if you refresh, now that's gone out of there. Okay, you can see all the items doing everything. So then you can port this report down and collapse like grants, DOJ grant, total for grants. You can use the total column to say how much is in grants, admin, programs. Again, with programs, if you have sub programs, then you're going to have all those items listed that are used. You're obviously seeing only the things that are used or things that are lumped into not specified. Okay. Now you can get to this a different way. If you just pull your statement of activity, switch back to classic view, see where it says display by totals? You can display by classes. And it brings up the same report. Okay, now it looks like we have some questions. So let me go over here to the questions. It says, I'm thinking about using projects for events. Would that be a good use of project? Yes, that would be 100%. We have two types of events, fundraising and community events. Could locations be a way to differentiate between the two types of events? The answer is yes. But you also could create classes for, like, you could create a class that says fundraising and a class that says community event and separate it that way. It says, can I run an account detailed report filtering by memo? Let's look. So if you want to do this and you want to switch back to classic view, you can do donor, vendor, employee, classes. We can do period. Let's hit here. It does not look, you can filter it by memo. Let me see if I open something that has like the memo. No. If you download that into Excel, you could filter by memo. Obviously, that's an additional step, but it does not look like inside of QuickBooks that you can filter by memo. It says, what is the difference between projects and programs? So, Danette, programs are your projects, but inside of QuickBooks, a project is an actual module. So if we go to projects, you can create a project, which could be a program if you're trying to do something specific, but you would create a project for a specific item that is a snippet of what your business does. So it's different than a budget, to track income and expenses against this item. Although I did teach this in the last class, I did include it in your guys' PowerPoint as it is something that I think you guys will end up using, because you're trying to track specific things. But when you see me talk about programs as in the financial statements, that's a class. But you could use projects as your programs if you were trying to do something specific. You also, if you do time costing with your employees, you would do that could come up as projects too, based on items you're tracking if you do integration with any software for their time clock. Danette, and let me know if that makes sense or made it worse for you. Carmen says, when you enter a new vendor or customer, it autofills both company and individual. If you do not edit this, it prints the name twice on the check, for example. Is there any way to change this without editing everyone? Sadly, no. You either have to go in and tell it what to print on the check, or you have to edit everyone. There's no, if you don't catch it when it's created originally, sadly, QuickBooks Online is not great at mass adjustments. There are a few tools that we'll talk about under miscellaneous tools that can be done, but that's not one of them, sadly. Okay, any other questions? Okay. Then let's talk about some miscellaneous tools. Okay, I'm going to toggle back over here to our accountant version. Okay, so underneath this little briefcase here, I have accountant tools. That's what they're called. So under accountant tools, there is a reclassify transaction tool. So if for some reason you created a rule by accident, or you created a duplicate account, or for whatever reason, there's something that needs to be moved and you need to move bulk amount of transactions, okay? This recategorization tab will allow me to select mass transactions and move them in a matter of a few clicks. Now that could be adding classes. Like I said, it could be on both balance sheet or P&L, and it could be for any time frame under the sun, okay? Now, obviously, we don't have a ton of transactions because today's training is not about entering data. We've already done that in the previous 3 trainings. But underneath here, this is only a tool available to accountants, and you can go ahead and mass select items. Now, granted, there's only one here, and I can click reclassify, and I can change here, and I can change here in a matter of seconds and hit apply. And now it's telling me they're unable to make those changes. And now I'd have to figure out why, right? So let's try another one and click here. And let's do contractor, and let's do DOJ. Says it's unable to make the changes. I don't know. Let me see if we refresh. We're not changing anything that should be complicated. So it should redo the transaction. There you go. So, and then that one disappears because there's no activity in it, and then it picks another one. Okay. You can do this on cash or accrual basis, again, with each financial certain time frames. Okay. But it's only a tool available to accountants. This happens when you have like an auto expense and you have fuel. Well, they're the same thing majority of the time. This happens when you have subcontractors versus contractors, or when you have utilities, but then you also have spectrum, gas, electric, trash. But they might get lumped into utilities and you want to reclass them, remove them to the proper subcategory. Okay. You can move both payments and deposits. As you can see, it will tell you when it doesn't like what you're trying to do with a transaction. It'll tell you it cannot be moved. But this is a miscellaneous tool, but only the accountant portal side has it. Okay. But save yourself from clicking on every individual transaction and mass move the data this way. The other thing we want to talk about is we have delayed credits and delayed charges. Okay. So If you go over here, let's go back to our dashboard. And we're going to use our search bar. So we're going to type in delayed. So a delayed credit is money that you've got coming in, but maybe you don't want to deposit the check within the calendar year. Maybe they need you to hold the check. Maybe it's that they've agreed to X amount of money, but they're only giving you portion of it now, but you want a credit for it because you know the money's guaranteed for, future dates. If you have grant funding, and it's a 3-year grant, you're guaranteed the money. So you know what to put as a delayed credit for the next 2 years, right? Um, so it's a way to track these types of things to give you an accurate financial statement or picture that's coming. Okay. It's not a required thing to use. It's an option. Okay. I just want to put it out there. Okay. So if I did DOJ, I'm going to do DOJ year 2. And this needs to be a sub donor, sub customer of the DOJ. Okay. And then I'm not going to get this money until next year. Delay credit number, you don't have to have it, you can have it, okay? We're gonna say it's a service and it is year 2 funding and say it's 500,000 and then this needs to go into DOJ, okay? I'm gonna hit save. Now, you can get back to it, like if you made a typo, you can see. You'll see any history you have, you can hit view more, and it'll take you to the screen where you can see more of it, okay? It's gonna tell you when it was modified last. Obviously, things change. You can edit it as you go. You can select date ranges, whatever it is, okay? So this transaction exists in QuickBook, but it is a non-posting transaction. So it is not going to reflect on any of your financials until the date it is active, okay? And when it does do the date that it's active, QuickBooks will ping you and say, this is now real, and you should see it on the financials, okay? Again, this is for forecasting. This will play into your budget tab. It's not a requirement. It's just another ad lib feature that we have. If you want to look at delayed charges, it looks kind of the same. We don't need this. And for training purposes, I'm just doing the same time frame here, same dollar amount, same everything, okay? Hmm. Well, there it goes. Okay, it's there. Perfect. So again, a delayed charge, you know it's coming, you don't have to pay it, it's due in the future, you know, just to have an idea of what you might need to know cash flow wise in the future. How far in the future you put it is totally up to you. Okay. Just another miscellaneous option for things that we have inside of QuickBooks. Okay. Now, as you can see, when you type in delayed, they have payroll, payments, invoices, charges, all this kind of stuff. So they have a lot of ability to try to get you to do more forecasting. I do not personally use delayed credits or delayed payments. We track everything as far as like grants, 3-year grants, funding outside of QuickBooks because we have budgets and things that have to be submitted anyways that gave us the funding originally to then obviously be able to go from there. So just some options as far as things that are there, not something that I personally use. Okay. Now it looks like we have a couple questions, so let me jump over to our Q&A. So Danette says, what is the difference between programs and projects and programs, which we talked about briefly? And then she said, so programs can be projects. That is correct. And events can be a project. That's correct. But the classes can also be a lump sum of all of those things. So, for example, your company as a nonprofit is tracking programs overall. The name is programs, okay? But your project that you're implementing is Summer Walk 2025, Polar Express 2024, Fall Gala 2024, Swim Program 2025. That's your individual project, okay? But all of that data is going into a lump sum total of a program, okay? Classes is categorizing or segmenting all of your expenses in your nonprofit based on what they were for. Admin expenses, fundraising expenses, program expenses could be attached to the projects, right? It could be, but it's going to go into the main program category, okay? And then grants has their own bucket. So the classes is just a way to segment all the different activity that's going on inside of QuickBooks. Programs is one of the segments you can have. Projects is a way to track individual activity going on, okay? Kate says, will these delayed transactions show as projections in the budget, or do you have to do something else to make them show there? Kate, they don't show until it's within that year of whatever the transaction is. And it will show under the actual numbers, not under the actual budget stuff that you're filling in. Any other questions on that? Okay. Then I want to talk about the last piece that we're going to talk about, which is the tax prep portion. So we have inside of the accountant side, the accounting tools, okay? We also then have underneath the book review, the wrap up. And then once all of this is done, then you have the ability to help do my accountant to do the tax prep stuff, okay? So let's click back over to the main view here. Let me get out of where we are. Let's go back to our dashboard because we try to start everything kind of at our dashboard, okay? And we want to type in tax prep in our search bar, okay? Prep for taxes. And QuickBooks is loading. All right, let's see about the income tax. Nope. There we go. So you can go through this module. So right now it says it's not offering the nonprofit module, but it will help you file other tax returns. Okay. So this module was on at one point and they have shut it off. Why? I don't know. Let's see if it's over here in our accountant side because our accountants tend to have more view here. So let's see. Tax. There we go. Okay. So underneath the accountant side, you have the prep for taxes. So this is what I have as far as pictures go for the things that we're trying to do. Again, I don't know why you can't see it over here. It's like grayed out. It won't let you get through to review income and expenses and kind of go from there. But it is a module that does exist again so that you can walk through your financials, do a quick overview, written reports before everything goes over to a CPA and starts to get actually done. So we'll have a list of year-end tasks. You create these. There's a bunch in here already that QuickBooks has created based on good business practices. Okay. You can assign them. You can have timings. You can have documents. Okay. Documents are going to show all your year-end statements, 1099-Ks, donor receipts, interest statements, bank statements, all the kind of things that your accountant asks for you at the end of the year. Okay. Honestly, there are donor things you need to turn in for everything over X amount of dollars and your big programs for the year and all these types of things. Okay. Then you're going to have the ability to review, make any changes, adjustments, export to Excel, same for profit and loss. So you have your balance sheet, profit and loss. So when you have data in here, it's all going to show. Okay. Then you have your grouping and statements. Again, putting everything out there based on what we're trying to accomplish, and then you can do your tax mapping. Okay. Now, we know this is not going to work, the tax mapping side, because they don't do the 990. Okay. So there is nothing that's going to show as far as license, but this is a tool not for QuickBooks to do the tax prep, but for you to get everything ready, have checks and balances with your accountant to be able to do that. Okay. And as you can see here, it tells me when it's only accountant view. So if you guys ever wonder what it is based on going back to the videos, if it says accountant view only, you can only view it if you're on this lovely side of the accountant tab. I don't know why, just so we're on the same page, but and then you can download paperwork, you can carry forward, you can lock the books. Okay. I do recommend locking the books at the end of a calendar year. Once the tax returns are done and all adjustments are made. Reason for that is then it stays in stone, and what's in QuickBooks should tie to what's on the tax return. Okay. Things that need adjusted at the end of the year tend to be depreciation schedules, major purchases, amortization, some of those random things, or if you have payroll that's accrued and it's mid-year to mid-year based on the pay cycle, some of that random stuff, those will be the adjustments needed. And then you close the books. And you close the books, you put a password on that, and then you cannot edit those transactions again. Because really, once they're in a tax return, they shouldn't be edited anyways. Okay. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that. It's a pain if you did need to edit it, but once the tax return's done, there should be nothing left to edit. You guys should be edited out. Okay. Now it looks like we have a couple questions, so let me jump over to the Q&A. So it says, my boss wants to track lots of events, some with detail, some with less detail. For example, for events, we have sponsors, participant fees, advertising expenses. In some reports, she wants to see them separate. Others, she wants to see them lump sum. Would you use projects and classes? To be honest, I would use a class for the event, and then you would have it categorized. And then when you port that data out, you can make it less detailed for the things that she wants to see lump sum and just have it say expense. And then you can expand it, meaning you show her all the individual detail. Could you do it as a project? Sure, but it can be done with just classes in general. Sadly, it's kind of a catch-22. I'd rather have more detail than not enough. So if you build it to have all the detail she wants, then the ones that she wants less detail on, she's just going to see the detail anyways, unless you just shrink it up in the Excel format. It says, I'm thinking projects for lump sum and subclasses for details. Both reports for one event. And she said, thank you. You're very welcome. So yeah, this is the downfall. We want the world, and now we have to manipulate QuickBooks to give it to us as nonprofits. And so I have spent the last year almost working with a specific nonprofit that wants to see every event and every grant and everything else, and they didn't have it set up properly, and then didn't realize the communication from the softwares and what limited information, as I talked about. You get a sliver of what you can put in Donor Perfect into QuickBooks. And so after showing them these things and doing these things, That's why I teach from it, because I did it with a nonprofit based on some of the things they want to see. And there are more of them out there that want to see the same type of detail, but there's 5 different ways to see it, and everybody's boss wants something different. So sadly, some of that is just you have to kind of roll with the punches and do it trial and error. Um, the classes is the best way to do it. Classes and subclasses, that gives you the detail you need. Creating custom reports to make pulling that data a lot easier, streamline it, make your life super easy, right? Then obviously once all the data's in for actual, you can then pull it against your budget if you import your budget. Um, Obviously once you create budget once, your budget's changing, but a lot of your stuff stays consistent in the nonprofit world, meaning your buckets stay consistent. The dollar amounts change, but the buckets stay consistent. So it's easy to then build the next year and the next year and the next year and keep the history. The benefit of QuickBooks is we're creating it to be a data house to keep everything in one spot. Should have all your statements, all your this, all your that, streamlining everything into one spot for you. Okay. As nonprofits, we need receipts for literally like everything, right? Every time, every credit card transaction, stuff like that. Like it is setting us up for success. You click on here, you add an attachment, there's your receipt. Okay. Hey, look, it came up. It took it a minute, but I figured it out. So here's our donor. We have our donor and project. I don't know why that took so long, guys. No idea. So let's go back and find that Facebook transaction, and I'll show you that it comes through on the reports. Edit. See, it has a donor column. DOJ. And let's do here one. Okay. Now, because I made that fix, because it came up, guys, it's exciting. So it gave us a run for our money for a minute. So let's do statement of activity. We're going to switch to classic view for simplicity purposes, customize for filters. There it is. Shows on both. You saw how we got it to do it, but obviously, again, when you're categorizing an expense, like you went to Target, but Target was used for a grant, you put Target in as the payee vendor, you put the grant name as the donor, and then you can classify it as whatever the transaction might be. Okay. Some of the transactions that are for grants might be going to programs, so you might track it that way, and that's okay too. That's again an internal thing. Okay. So that is everything we were going to cover today. So we are ahead of schedule because we had a smaller group, which is okay. It looks like we have a couple questions. So I'm going to answer these couple questions, leave it open to any additional questions that you guys have. And then once I answer these 2 questions, I will put my contact information up on the screen. If you have one-off individual questions, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to Canton Score, the ones doing this seminar with me, and give them any feedback. If you can't get in touch with me, they can get you in touch with me, those types of things as well. It says, can I pull a budget using classes? Let's try. Get out of here, go back to our thing here, type in budget. Let's go to filter. That way, general options. That way. Let's see. It does not look like it does anything with the classes inside of here. In any of the general options, it looks like it's giving me. So no, I would say the answer to that, based on just briefly looking at it, I don't see anywhere where it can specify by class. Would be nice if that's how you're building your budget, for sure. Okay, so let me put up my contact information for you guys. And we're obviously ahead of schedule, so you guys get a half an hour back in your day. But feel free, like I said, to leave any questions. We'll stay on for just a few minutes, and then John, I don't know if you have any notes for the end either.
And no, I don't, other than the big thank you. And
Well, perfect. It looks like we don't have any other questions. I'm just scanning through the chat module, make sure nothing got lost in here. Looks like a lot of you guys did great introductions. This is awesome. It looks like there's even some networking going on in the chat. That's what this stuff is all about as well. Sharon, the video information is located on their SCORE website. Gwen, do you send out an email like you've done in the past?
I do.
Perfect. So Sharon, you will get an email that tells you where to go or gives you the link to the videos.
right, and once you're in the Canton Score pre-recorded webinars, you will be able to see the other 3 QuickBooks sessions as well: beginner, intermediate, and expert.
Well, perfect. If we have no other questions, guys, I think we can close up shop.
And again, thank you so much for all 4 webinars on QuickBooks. It was very educational, I'm sure, for everyone that logged in. Speaking for myself and Canton Score, it's a great knowledge-based information. So thank you.
Absolutely, anytime. I really enjoy running them.